Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Good morning. Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
I'm Asana Kayatano.
And thank you for joining us this morning.
And we were just saying, Marlene, how quickly the weekend flies by.
Yeah.
We were here on Friday getting ready for the weekend ahead, a rather eventful weekend.
Yeah.
And before you know it, we're back at work.
Yeah.
And the folks at home are getting ready for work.
I do feel like I blinked and
Yeah.
it just passed. And it is a bit of a rainy morning. And so we're going to get that in first to find out what we're going to expect for today. We have Michael Gentle on the line. Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
How are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing fine.
All right. So it's looking pretty dark out there. I'm assuming there's some rain coming here in the city.
Yeah, radar is showing some showers over coastal waters, just offshore. So we still have our moist northeasterly airflow prevailing over the area, but we're expecting moisture to decrease during the next couple of days.
Okay. So what's our 24-hour forecast?
Okay, we expect some cloudy spells today and tonight, and we can expect a few showers and isolated thunderstorms. Northern and some coastal areas this morning. Some additional showers will develop over inland areas this afternoon and over the south again tonight.
Mm-hmm. And our winds?
Winds will be from the north and northeast at 5 to 10 knots. Sea conditions will be slight.
Okay. And our high temperatures for today?
Okay, temperatures continue cool, relatively cool. We expect 86 along the coast, 84 inland, and 78 in the hills. Mm-hmm. And for tonight, 77 along the coast, 73 over inland areas, and 68 for the high elevations.
Okay. And I want to go back to the advisory that you have out this morning. Do you want to update us with that?
Yeah, BCOL has called us and informed that the spillway, the Baca spillway became active, so they're getting some overflow. Mm-hmm. And we could expect some flash flooding for areas downstream from the Baca dam.
Okay, all right. That's very important information to note. Sure. And looking forward to the next couple of days?
Okay, as I mentioned, we should see a decrease in shower activity with activity coming generally isolated for Tuesday and Tuesday night. But we can still get a few showers over the south and some coastal areas.
Okay. Now, we are in the final month of the hurricane season. Is there anything we need to be monitoring at this time?
No, situation is quiet as we speak. We don't expect any development for at least the next couple of days.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you very much for that update.
Okay, welcome.
You have a great day today.
Same to you.
All right.
So it's just a warning.
Yeah.
To folks who live downstream from the Vaca Dam, that there is a chance of flash flooding as a result of the spillway being activated.
Yeah, we have been getting a lot of rains. I know that they do have some work that they've done with the communities to prepare.
Yeah.
But of course, we'll be checking in on that for sure to see what that looks like. But we're grateful to the Met Service for providing that update for us so that we can share it with you as well. And it seems like we have still wet day today, but it's going to be getting better by tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it becoming stable.
All right, so it is a Monday morning and there is a whole lot to get into talking about the weekend activities. So we are actually going to shift gears and we're going to find out what happened over the weekend and some of the stories we'll be looking forward to in the week ahead. So let's go into Eye on the News.
So Marlene, the singular focus this morning is on the convention held yesterday, Sunday, November 3rd, and this was held here in Belize City by the United Democratic Party, specifically for candidate John Saldivar, who is also contesting the seat for leadership of the UDP. And this, of course, succeeds the initial convention, or the initial assembly, if I may, that was held by his contender, Patrick Faber. And what is very obvious and evident from the onset is that this was a massive crowd that was brought out to the Belize City Center yesterday. And supporters were mobilized from across the country. Being in and around the area of the convention, you observed buses from as far south as Barranco Village that came out with supporters of John Saldivar. And there were quite a number of area representatives and standard bearers present as well. Now, by comparison, when you look at what Patrick Faber was able to bring out and the support that he has, and you look at the fact that it seems to be in favor of John Saldivar in terms of the number of area representatives and standard bearers who turned up yesterday. One of the key things to keep in mind here, Marlene, is that notwithstanding the strength in numbers that came out for both of the conventions, the fact of the matter is that only 500 and some odd delegates will actually be determining who the leader of the United Democratic Party is. Again, though, when you look at strength in numbers, you kind of get the impression that the scales are tipping in favor of John Saldivar in terms of just looking at the groundswell of support. It's not to say that he would have automatically won the bid.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. And as a matter of fact, we've seen this before where the underdog emerged victorious in the last go-round, where Patrick Faber was able to defeat John Saldivar at the polls in similar fashion. So,
but I think it was different because they did have they shared the political support from the representatives. I think this is, well, a few observations that I've made. Clearly, hosting the event in the same location meant that you did have to outdo in terms of numbers. The person who goes second kind of knows where the bar is, so they know how to exceed it. So I'm not too surprised by the amount of people, mobilizing people to come out together to events is a part of what is the politics or part of the normal activities from politicians specifically. But it definitely does give for an impression of massive support. But beyond the numbers of the people who've been bused, and I think what's critical to look at are the area representatives who have publicly given support. We know we saw that flyer or that photograph put out last week looking at, I think they're saying 21 standard bearers and area representatives who are saying that they support Honorable Saldivar, and I think that is rather interesting. I'm not sure, we haven't been able to hear from anyone who's publicly supporting Honorable Faber. So I think that looking at the last convention go around, he did have some supporters. There were some people on his team, but it's interesting that everyone seems to only be willing to align themselves with one candidate. And you are right. Like every election, we always say it's one on election day. You don't know what's going to happen. But some of these things, I think, do raise questions as to why these persons feel okay publicly supporting Honorable Saldivar versus Honorable Faber. What's happened within the party itself to kind of make this swing in one direction?
Before we go to an interview with Honorable Saldivar, I'd like to quickly look at the schedule of events, if I may, that will lead up to the November 2020 general elections. You have a leadership convention in early February of 2020. And so one of the concerns is whether or not between February and the actual beginning or the start of the election campaign for the party would have been sufficient time for there to be healing. Because, as you know, when you have leadership conventions, there is a divide among the mass supporters of the party. And so there needs to be a sort of mending of fences before the party is able to move forward. And we're looking at a space of roughly 7 months or so in between. And that is because there has to be that healing, and of course there has to be the onward movement to campaign for the upcoming general election. So that is a critical point to look at as well. So what we want to do at the moment, Marlene, we'll go to an interview that was conducted with Honorable John Saldivar at the convention yesterday and hear his thoughts and see what his position is in respect of his candidacy.
When you look at an accusation that has been made against me and you compare that to the many accusations and the record of many in the People's United Party, I think you will find that the Belizean people will prefer my leadership, will prefer my party, the UDP, over that PUP bunch anytime.
So now, would you concede with the showing that you've had here, the 20 or 22 persons now declared standard bearers and ministers or area representatives? Is Patrick Faber's only hope to run a guerrilla campaign to snipe off the delegates?
Well, that might be his only hope, but I'm not too sure that will work this time around. I think we have greater resolve among our cabinet colleagues and our constituency colleagues that we'll be doing things differently this time to ensure that we remain united leaders with their constituencies.
But even, for example, in Africa, Mr. Papa Mena introduced you, we've seen that Boss P is not necessarily with Frank Papa Mena. He declared for himself that you wrongly linked him on your page.
That's a story left to be told.
So Boss P said that he not there with Saldivar. He didn't say it's with Faber.
That's a story left to be told.
What will it look like for you up to February 2020?
Repeat that?
What will it look like for you now to gain more delegate support?
On the road, meeting every single delegate of the party, trying to convince them that I'm the best option, and my team, of course, along with Honorable Hugo Pat and Honorable Beverly Williams, that we are the best team, we are the best leaders to take this party to the next stage.
But sir, do you know who the delegates are? Because I've heard that no list has been released, no list has been publicly released. We know that the D in the UDP is not necessarily for democracy without a guided element.
Some of the constituencies have already released their delegates, their delegate list, and so we are certainly contacting them. Remember that we also have 32 delegates from the tongue boards, 32 or 31. We also have another 21 or so from the central executive who we already know, and so we can already begin to target those. And of course, if you're close to the constituencies, as I am with their leaders, I'm sure that I have a good idea of who will be the delegates going into February.
If you have 20, but my point is, isn't it incumbent on the secretariat or the executive to authorize the release of the delegates' names in the name of democracy?
Yes, those that have been declared are already released. We have until the end of December to declare our delegates.
All right, so that was an interview, a brief interview with John Saldivar insofar as being able to meet with the respective area representatives and their prospective delegates leading into the convention.
Yeah, definitely. The interview started off, I think, with him tackling the issue of allegations made against them, which is always going to be a part of the conversation moving into this type of vote, and he seems prepared to respond to that now. It's going to be interesting. I got to say that much. So each constituency nominates, you were telling me?
It's 14 delegates from my understanding.
Okay.
Right? So that's each constituency. But there are other persons who have a vote to cast as well.
Like the executive?
Yeah.
Who else?
The town boards.
Okay.
The Senate. The senators, should I say. One of the things you have to keep in mind, Marlene, is the fact that John Saldivar is running a slate.
Yes.
As opposed to Patrick Faber, who's running individually.
Yeah.
And that being said, it also explains the support system that he has been able to put together. And this is in respect of the various posts that are to be filled within the hierarchy of the party. We're looking at first deputy leader, we're looking at the second, we're looking at the
Second
entire,
deputy, yeah.
we're looking at the entire roster.
We should be clear about that. This is the launch of the slate. It's Saldivar for leader, Hugo Pat as first deputy,
Yeah.
and Beverly Williams as second deputy. I'm not sure if any of the other posts or people running for the other posts have aligned with him as well. Or it's only
For
these
chairman,
three?
I'm not quite certain.
Yeah.
I'm not quite, I'll be honest in saying that I didn't follow that
Yeah.
aspect to see if he has a chairman candidate on the slate. But that's what we have, that's what we're looking at.
It
It'll
is
be
a-
interesting to see what those developments are going forward.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, we will keep following this. I think this is going to be perhaps one of the most prominent issues as we move into January, the election of the new leader of the United Democratic Party in February. And there you have it, both candidates for leaders have launched their campaign.
So quickly, two other
Yeah.
things that I want to touch on briefly. On Friday, we reported on a shooting incident, or a pair of shooting incidents, separate altogether, that occurred on the 31st of October on Halloween night, and in which one individual, Malik Acosta, was shot, and another individual, Adam Joseph, was shot in front of the Belize City Center. Over the weekend, we were made to understand that Mr. Joseph passed away from the injuries he received. So we will be looking into that story as a murder investigation. The other thing is, on Friday evening, the National Garifuna Council formally launched the opening of the month of November, which is chock filled with activities leading up to the 19th. And so that was held at the Lirisi restaurant here in Belize City, and it had a fairly decent turnout as well. And so we'd like to invite all Belizeans, more so my fellow Garifuna brothers and sisters, to participate in the upcoming events leading up to the 19th, and I'm sure we'll provide coverage as well.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I keep on telling people I don't start talking about Christmas until after Garifuna Settlement Day, because I think we are so blessed to be able to have the opportunity to celebrate the Garifuna culture. And what's interesting is how they've kind of taken it on as beyond just a 19th celebration to having activities building up to that day itself, because it used to be, you know, everything happens on November 18th, and I think people wanted hudut and drumming long before that as well. So it is going to be a fun month. We are in November, and I'm definitely going to keep up to date with that. We're looking forward to some of the segments here on Open Your Eyes as well. I do have one piece of information to share as well. Of course, today is actually Holy Redeemer Primary School in Belize City celebrating its 150th anniversary.
Wow.
So as my alma mater, I have to say that much. I don't usually plug things like that. I did want to say congratulations to them. If you hear the long history of the school itself, all the great people who've passed through the school, all the educators who've made such an impact, it is a great achievement. And I just wanted to say happy anniversary to all those who are celebrating today as well.
Perfect.
All right.
All right, so that concludes our Eye on the News this morning. And of course, these stories and more will be brought to you live at 6:30 on Channel 5.
All right, and from the news, we move into a bit of motivation this morning, right?
We are going to our eye opener.
That's right. So today's eye opener, taken from dailyom.com, goes like this. Being present lets us experience each moment in our lives in a way that cannot be fully lived through memory or fantasy. It can be easy for us to walk through the world and our lives without really being present. While dwelling on the past and living for the future are common pastimes, it is physically impossible to live anywhere but the present moment. We cannot step out our front door and take a left turn to May of last year, any more than we can take a right turn to December 2025. Nevertheless, we can easily miss the future we are waiting for as it becomes the now we're too busy to pay attention to. We then spend the rest of our time playing catch up to the moment that we just let pass by. Each present moment is completely new, and nothing like it has happened or will ever happen again. As you move through your day, remember to stay present in each moment. In doing so, you will live your life without having to wait for the future or yearn for the past.
I find myself oftentimes stuck or caught between reminiscence and progressive thinking, right?
Yeah.
So that indeed there are times when in the here and now, things just happen to fly by because I'm either thinking about things that have happened in the past.
Yeah.
Like it's like a pondering of things that I could have changed.
Yeah.
Or I'm looking ahead. I'm thinking, what can I set as a goal that I can accomplish in the near future or in the long term? But there are things that are happening at present that simply go by in the blink of an eye. And so this eye-opener, to me, speaks to that issue in my life where I'm thinking, I should be present here and now to make the difference that I can at the moment.
Yeah.
And so it's often a challenge to try to be present in terms of your state of mind and in terms of the decisions and actions that come along with that.
You are so right. It's so hard. And I think, actually, we, because I have the same issue, are not unique. I've been watching the series on Netflix, of course. It's called Explained, and it's a mini series, and there's one particularly on mindfulness, and it's amazing when they deconstruct how our brain works, and it looks at exactly that, how we're kind of wired to be looking at the past as a guide, but also looking at the future as to plotting out where we want to go, and how important it is to be able to develop a practice of mindfulness so that you can be able to just experience the moment that you're in. And you miss a lot. I feel it. I always think of it with children, like they're around and you turn around and they're
young adults.
tweens and teens and adults, and you've missed so much. And even in human interaction, it can be sometimes that we're physically distracted by something, or that we just let our mind wander and we don't necessarily tune in. So I think that's a great challenge for all of us, and especially as we start off on this Monday morning, right?
Yep.
Okay. So we got a little chit chat that we wanted to get our social media viewers to chime in on. This is an interesting one because this one, I think, like everywhere else in the world, is pretty popular. I'm gonna ask you because you're so great with social media, right, Tisani?
Hey,
So
I'm a cave dweller when it comes to social media.
So how do you feel about social media outrage, or the way people perhaps support causes, call out things online? Do you think it's helpful, or do you think it's hurtful to a cause?
It depends. In my opinion, it depends on what the cause actually is. Some situations require somewhat of a physical presence in order to be able to affect the change, or for the outrage to be effective, if I may. Why do I say that? Because a lot of times you find that on social media, everyone has an opinion, right? Every single person has an opinion. But when it's time for them to actually put that into action and be present, then you see a lot of people nowhere near what the cause actually is, right? So that's my vantage point insofar as how I look at what happens in the social media realm and what happens in my own expression in the real world.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of feel like maybe the producer was prompted by a clip that's gone viral by Obama, actually, talking of this very same issue. And he was talking about young people and just this exact, I've said it so many times on the show, a hashtag won't do much. You have to be able to take action, and it's
get out
critical.
and get going.
And so what the former U.S. President Obama was saying, he's like, he understands that this is kind of like the millennial way of doing things, but you can't just call somebody out online or join in on a hashtag or post a photo and then go back to, binge watching Netflix.
Yeah.
Like, that's not enough.
You
It
need
takes
to be physically
more
present.
than that.
You need
yeah.
to be proactive. You need to be on the
Yeah.
ground and getting stuff done.
And it almost feels, it amplifies the judgmental side of us. I feel like if I just call you out online and, perhaps brought you some negative attention, I've done my part. I did it.
Yeah.
I can be crowned, activist of the year. The talk is not enough. And it doesn't mean that it's either talk or protest or online. It means that you have to take an actual action for a cause. So I think it can be helpful in raising awareness for issues that maybe we were not exposed to before. But you cannot be comfortable thinking that your hashtag or your share or your like or love or whatever it is enough. Like, if you're really passionate about that cause, you have to do more.
It has to be substantiated with action.
Yeah.
Without action, then all you have is a word or your text support floating out in cyberspace, and that's all that amounts to. I'm always of the opinion, Marlene, that whatever movement it may be, whether it's for change or whether it's for social awareness, you have to have some form of physical action and the support that goes along with that. As you rightfully said, putting things out there is great because a lot of people are going to learn or catch on to what is happening in the present.
Yeah.
But getting it done requires that you need to actually be on the ground and lead the charge, so to speak.
Or, if you have an issue with single-use plastics, we see a lot of people who will enjoy watching the videos and whatnot. I go to the supermarket, I don't see that many people bringing in their own bags. It's just, and I'm guilty too, because I never remember to take it physically out of the car. But what I'm saying is, we can jump onto these causes and hashtag and say, I'm with you, but I'm with you means I am physically with you, not just
Not
what
morally,
my fingers
not morally supporting.
can put out on a keyboard. And so I think that's a great question, and we'd love to hear from you as well. What do you think of all the? I think there's a term for it. It's called clicktivism. You think you can click on something, and that's your sense of activism. But what are your thoughts on it? Do you think it helps? Do you think it hurts? Do you think it's perhaps great for awareness, but not really getting people to go beyond just showing support online? Go ahead and share your thoughts, and we'll fit that in somewhere within the show, right?
All right.
So, and with that, we got to get moving into our show.
Yes. Before we do so, however, we have a birthday feature.
Yeah.
And we are saying happy birthday to Daphne Ferguson. Happy birthday, Daphne.
Yes,
There.
do have an enjoyable day
There she
today. And of course, that comes from all of us here at Channel 5 and Open Your Eyes. And remember, if you want to be featured in our birthday shout out, just go ahead and send us a message or an email and contact us here at Channel 5. But our conversation today is going to start off with the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. We know they recently released the report, and so we're going to get some of the highlights of what that's saying and some of the spin-off issues as a result.
The second segment of our show this morning is a conversation with the Belize Association of Planners and why it is important for urban growth.
All right. And then we're closing off with some vegan options from Martha's Cafe at Om Shanti. So if you're looking for something healthy to eat today, we'll give you some ideas in the final part of our show. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we'll get right into it. So stay tuned.
With over 100 years of service.
Come on, Kamal, bring the entire family to KTV Latino.
And welcome back to the first segment of our show. As we kick things off this morning, we have been joined on set by Honorable Julius Espat. He is the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, and this morning we are going to be discussing details of a report that came to light in last week. And in that report were several issues of concern raised by the chairman himself. We're going to give him that opportunity to be able to discuss in full what those concerns are. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Marlene.
Mm-hmm.
Let's begin by first going to the Auditor General's report, because I believe that is important to preface what you submitted as the chairman's report.
Yeah.
The Auditor General's report has been released. We covered it extensively at the time that actual document was made public. It speaks to perhaps some irregularities and some areas of concern insofar as public monies and how that is being spent. From your position as a chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, what did you make of the actual report?
It was revealing. I brought two reports here because
Yeah.
this is the 212, 213, which is the one that we worked on. And there's another one, 213, 214. But on both reports, the most alarming is the opinion of the Auditor General, which is whenever you do an audit, that's the first thing you go
Yeah.
to look at, which is a summary of everything that has been done. And in that summary, she basically lays it out that she cannot give an opinion of the financial statements of government because information is either hidden, not accessible, cooperation within the ministries is not there. And so she can't find the necessary information to be able to give an opinion, which anywhere in the world, either in the public or private sector, is incredibly alarming. It means that in the private sector, you would be close to bankruptcy, and the banks would come in after you. In the public sector, it means that you're running an inefficient government, and some would even go to the level as say a corrupt government. So that's where we are. And the analysis that was done in PAC was based on the information provided from the Auditor General. You have to remember the PAC function is based on the Auditor General and other things, basically any financial aspects that has to do with the budget.
Yeah. You know, let me tie something in here. So we had the eye opener talking about being in the present moment, and that's kind of where I wanted to start. The Public Accounts Committee, as established, is actually meant to be a very important committee in keeping our government systems transparent and accountable to us, the public, through you and your work. One of the challenges we've seen time and time again is just where do you start? And as you're stating, the recent report is looking back at 2012, 2013. We're looking at 7 years ago. While that information is absolutely critical, I will never say that we shouldn't get this type of investigation. The question always remains, shouldn't we be looking at more present or more timely information? And what are your thoughts on that?
But that's how it should work.
Yes.
In other developing countries, the limitations I believe they give the Auditor General to present to the PAC is like 6 months. And the way it is supposed to be done is government should be on top of it through the legislature. Remember, governments are formed by 3 branches, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. In this case, the executive overpowers the legislature to the point where they make the committees meaningless, all of them. And that's why we have been championing having the Public Accounts Committee, and not even the Public Accounts Committee, all committees in Parliament, they should be held in public. Why should they be held in public? There's a thing called transparency, and people hear the word, oh, transparency, it doesn't really mean nothing, but Transparency is when a government works in the open and allows their decisions to be scrutinized by other parties, not only the opposition parties, but by everybody. And that way people have a better image, a better understanding of how their money is being spent in this case, and therefore can make decisions that we're not happy. And in that case, we lobby our area representatives to go and challenge our issues, or we lobby other people. That's how change comes about. But we have had leaders, and this starts from 1981, that have worked in secrecy. They have worked in darkness, and they have dealt with things under the table, not above the table. And they force you all as the media and the people to not have that information. They do it relatively well because they have gotten away with it for so long. But we have to ask the question, if there's nothing to hide, then what is there to fear? And it is important that we analyze this. The Public Accounts Committee is the only committee in the legislature that gives you checks and balances.
Well, but just let me press it a little bit further, because I wanted to be clear to what's happening here. It is a good thing that we have a Public Accounts Committee, and I think we can celebrate that. But it feels very much like an element of tokenism. It's, you want transparency and accountability here. There's a Public Accounts Committee, it's led by the opposition, see, we did that. But if you are not given the tools to be able to execute the mandate effectively, which is looking at how we are spending as close to today as possible, because quite frankly, I think going back into 2012, 2013, no matter what you bring forward as concerns to people, it's so far from recent memory that it's hard to resonate with.
It is, but it's not. The issues are the same. So everything that's happening to us right now has been stated before. And so it doesn't really matter, in the experience I've had in the public account, it doesn't really matter which report of the Auditor General we analyze, the issues are the same. I mean, and you can see it as it goes along. The specific issues are different. And I understand, we Belizeans, we tend to only react to what's happening now. But we have to start analyzing the situation on a whole. That we have a Public Accounts Committee, and you can put it on paper, says we have a Public Accounts Committee. Well, I think that's even more dangerous than not having a Public Accounts Committee.
I think that is an achievement.
Because I would disagree a bit, because I think you're fooling the people. You're creating a facade that has no structure and no substance. So when you have international donors trying to assist you with a loan, they would look at certain things. Do you have a Public Accounts Committee? Do you have an Integrity Commission? Do you have a Contractor General? And look at those three things. We have been playing really negatively with the three items, because the Contractor General has not been functioning. The Integrity Commission has not been functioning. The Public Accounts Committee has not been functioning, but yet we have it on paper. So what happens is that these foreign entities give you the loans based on the fact that you have the checks and balances in place, and it becomes worse, because then the money just disappears.
May I interject to say that while I hate to bring politics into this, it's difficult to divorce the two things.
You can't.
Right?
You can't.
Don't you find yourself in a position where, as chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, you come in with your own vision of what you want to see achieved by this particular task force? However, the fact that there are scandals in the past, not necessarily this administration, but in the previous People's United Party administration, that people kind of look at the post that you hold cynically, because how do you now clamor for certain changes in respect of transparency and accountability when your forebears are accused of having been doing the same things under the table?
But that's a fact. And we can't run away from reality, and we can't stay at that level of reality and continue at the level of corruption that we are right now. We have to move on, and we have to try. I personally believe, and I think the party to a certain extent believes, that you can't rely on personalities. You can't rely on anybody to be put into a situation where there is no regulations involved and expect that person will do absolutely good. So what we are trying to propose is to have a system in place that limits what the politician can or cannot do. And that's in the developing world, that's how they do it. And it's done because you have participation of people. So I believe more in systems in place than to have personalities and you want to put somebody on an altar, and when that person cannot reach the altar, then you demonize him. Well, you have to try, and I believe you have to continuously try. But just to mention one thing that you said, it is not that I have gone into the PAC to be able to start something that has not been there before. The Public Accounts Committee is based on the parliamentary system. We function under the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, and the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association is cognizant of the fact that small branches like Belize within their organization, they're not following or they can't follow what the rule of law expects of them, because the system in which they're operating functions for a large parliamentary group and not for a small branch. So the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association has been focusing on how to adjust the necessary legislations, how to adjust how we operate in Parliament, how to adjust how we operate as governments to be able to look at you're looking at sometimes 17 members of a House of Representatives. In our case, it's 31 compared to 650 odd that's in the United Kingdom. And you see in the United Kingdom where you have this everybody pulling each other from all sides. That right now it might seem that it's crazy, but it's part of democracy. It does not allow dictatorship to take over. And that is what we fight for in Belize, democracy. The essence of what we are fighting for is the preservation of democracy. And as best as we can to make sure that the money that is allocated to the people reaches the people. Right now it's not reaching the people. I mean, and you can put any kind of statistics you want out there as government. But at the end of the day, when you carry $100, well, I'm being unfair because most people don't have $100 to take to the supermarket. But I went with $100 the other day and I could barely find anything to provide 2-3 meals. So imagine an impoverished person in a rural community that does not have access to even $100. How do they survive? That is when you start analyzing if in truth your economy is doing well or not. It's sometimes the statistics are not true because, for example, they would take out people that are employed in an area where they might only be employed 1 week for the entire year, but they use the census for that week to cover the entire area, and it's not a true picture of what's happening.
And you know, it's a tough way to start the conversation because we want to get into the meat of the matter. But I think it is critical that we rehash it because until we understand that systems in place are one thing, but systems working efficiently is another. You know, we won't be able to get the full benefit.
There's one law in Belize that affects us all, and that is the minister's discretion.
Yes, but let me. You know, we're moving into election cycle very soon. Manifestos are being formatted, whatnot. This issue of the Public Accounts Committee and being able to bring it up to speed, it's going to take a very mature politician to promise and actually execute that they would allow a Public Accounts Committee to be able to investigate or to look at how the spending of public funds is going as close to present day as possible. In other words, it can be promised in a manifesto and it'll probably still be delayed 7 years, 8 years. And most naturally the thinking is investigate what the past administration did.
Which happened already.
Yes. So what are your thoughts on this ever being able to become the Public Accounts Committee that it should be and that is needed in the country?
Well, I've been one of the most vocal reform opposition era reps within the People's United Party. And the party leader understands that. We have had our differences in the past, but with this one, we are quite clear. He understands, and we understand, that if we don't become more accountable as a government, any government will fail, and he will fail as a leader. And so it is important that I am comforted by the fact that he understands that it is so important for us to do this. That's why we have a government's reform policy paper that we presented recently, that the party is trying to enshrine in its constitution, because it is so important. The restructuring of the Public Accounts Committee is one that we have spoken of in the past that we believe still has to happen. And as I said, we are not doing anything out of the ordinary. It is based on the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association's benchmarks. And so we are trying to raise our level to a level that will allow the economy to grow. For example, Jamaica, IMF just did a report in Jamaica that Jamaica has spent a lot of money investing in its oversight mechanisms. And by doing that, they have allowed the economy to grow, they have reduced unemployment. It is showing, and it's not only Jamaica, we use Jamaica as an example, but if you go to the developing worlds, they were not always developed.
Yes.
And they decided that it has to be done this way so that the real money reaches where it needs to be. Well, you have to understand that in opposition and NGOs, we don't look at setting policy, you know. That is the role of the duly elected government. That's their responsibility. They set policy as they see fit in how the money should be spent. The checks and balances comes in afterwards. All right, you decide you want to spend $100 million on such things, then we want to know if the $100 million was spent properly. We want to know if it didn't go to your brother. We want to know if it didn't go to your family. We want to know if it really went where it needed to go. We want to know if there was value for money. Those are basic questions that anybody would ask. Like when you go to a supermarket and you go home, you bring a leaf bag with $100 and your wife tell you, boss, that's all where you bring, where you spend the money. So you have to show the receipt. It's as simple as that.
That being said, if we are to look at a specific area of the report, where I believe, if I'm not mistaken, on page 10, there are certain concerns that are being flagged. I know one, for instance, has to do with the two Belmopan businesses, Special Effects and Special Effects Performance, where you highlighted the fact that based on the Auditor General's report, there was a loss of government monies in transacting with these two companies, somewhere to the tune of $1.8 million. Well, it goes back to what you're saying. You set out to have policies on how certain monies are to be spent, but then at the back end, when you go back and do the audit, you realize that you're in the red more than you were profitable.
What the Auditor General said, what the Accountant General said, what everybody has said based on the report is that we're not spending the money based on the financial regulations that the country has. It's simple. The financial regulations tells you to be able to purchase something, you need to do this, this, and this. It goes to another level. The Prime Minister does not follow the law when it comes to how you spend or borrow your money. That has been proven in the courts, where we took a court case with the Petrocarib and the Prime Minister knew that he would have lost, went back to the House, passed a law to be able to justify his wrongdoings in the past. So you're talking from the man at the top, setting the example of not following the rule of law when it pertains to the Finance and Audit Act. What do you expect the rest to do? So there are simple procedures. The Auditor General in her report states, if you buy a product and the product is destined for area A, then the storeroom in area A basically has to receive the product. And note, I receive 50 tires, for example.
Yeah.
That's their job. But they can't find the report that says that the tires reach.
Yeah.
For example, if it says you as government will purchase something, if it's you, Isani, with your personal money will collect every 2 weeks, you can buy it anywhere. So you can decide, I will buy a tire for $50,000 because I like the owner and I like the tire and the tire look nice to me and I want to buy that tire. So you want to spend $50,000 on that tire. But when you're in government, it is different. The law tells you that you have to get your quotations in place. You have to be efficient in the way you purchase. So it is very difficult to justify the purchasing of equipment or goods from a supplier that is not the main supplier of the same product. So you can just go right down the road and say, all right, the guy will sell you, I'm buy it for he instead because I am buying for the people. And therefore I need to be efficient with the money. And so I can get it for half the price. That is what the Auditor General basically said there, that money was spent. It was spent on the highest, there wasn't even a bidder, it was spent on the highest person. And the products that were received were never received. Everything along the way.
The products that were paid for were never received.
Well, there is somebody received it.
So, well, you took me back to another point, because one of the crucial areas is looking at the process of how purchases are made, and there should be a tendering or a bidding process that is built in. How often is it found that that process is actually executed?
In every report that the Auditor General presented, the process is ignored. The accountability of the process is ignored.
So it's a hand-picked sale.
They decide who they want. At the ministers, you see, that's what I told you in the beginning. There is laws in Belize that are really good laws, but after every law, there is a little clause that says, at the minister's discretion at the end of when you see the laws. That is the most dangerous words in parentheses that you can ever find.
Because it allows the minister to be able to override the entire process. Gotcha.
And they use it not for good. And that is why I tell the public servants, be careful. In other countries, when investigations come in, it is the person that is in the public service that does the unlawful act that normally ends up in jail. To avoid that, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, through their experience, tell the public service, if you are asked to do something that is illegal or immoral or you're not comfortable with, then you request from the politician a note or a letter instructing you to do it. It is simple as that. You take the lean napkin and sign this, and you put that napkin in your envelope and save it and copy it like 50 times in case they don't burn it.
But this is like the theory education and the practical execution issue. It's like telling the police officer, I want you to tell me the reason why you're picking me up, and then you might get beat up. That's what most people would talk about. Or
Well, I have gone through the beat up already to be able to express it, so I don't have a problem with that part.
Even in public service, you know, we talk with the unions about this. We ask them how much they educate their members on the fact that they also have a level of accountability as well.
Everybody has.
This is how I see it, right? If you'll allow me to jump in along with you there, Marlene. There is a thing called plausible deniability, where the person in power, in this case the minister, would be able to make certain decisions and have someone else be the fall guy if that person does not cover their own end. And I think this is what you're alluding to. The fact that perhaps the area representative or the minister, the person in office can say, okay, well, for these $50,000, this is how we're going to purchase the tires and this is who we're going to give it to. You're going to be the one to have to sign for it. Yeah. That person, after the end of his tenure, is no longer in power. An investigation commences into how that money was actually spent. They're not going to call him up. They're going to call you, the public servant, up.
No, but they should call him up. In other countries, and we have seen it in Latin America, where past presidents have gone to jail for exactly the same thing.
Yes.
It's just that we are a young country, and now we're 38 years old, and we have not felt the pain the way other countries have felt it. We are starting to feel the pain. And right now the pain is based on high crime, which is affecting everybody, which is a part of it.
Yeah.
The pain right now that we are feeling is that we are owing close to $4 billion right now. The pain is that we have people that really are not living at a certain level, quality of life that they should. But it is not the hunger pain that other countries have faced that have led to revolutions. We want to avoid that. We don't want to go in that direction. But it is going in that direction. Whereas only a selected few are the ones that reap everything. And most of the cases and most of the times, those selected few are politicians. The politicians nowadays cannot justify how they live with the salaries that they have. They cannot justify owning the amount of houses that they have with the salaries that they obtain. They cannot justify the sizes of their homes based on the salaries that they have. And that's why you go back to an integrity commission. The concept of an integrity commission is if I decide to run for politics, I hand in my integrity report the first day I'm elected.
You have to declare your assets.
You
right?
declare your assets.
This is how much I own already.
If I own $20 million, well, I have $20 million. See there?
Yeah.
And when you come out, they calculate, all right, as a minister, we get $100,000 a year. All right, cool. $100,000 a year plus 5 years, you have $500,000. Plus, if you're going to lease a business or whatever, you have another $500,000. So you might have $1 million saved. Well, it's not saved because then you have to spend. All right, you got $1 million. But you can't come in with minus $1 million. And after 5 years, you come out with $20 million.
Yeah.
Then, and we look at it and say, oh, my body do good. But do good on whose back?
But that's the overall perception, though.
But we have to fight it. We can't accept it.
You can't fully explain how you amass that wealth over the specific period of time.
And that's why they hide. They say, remember I told you, if you have nothing to fear, then you should have nothing to hide.
Yeah.
That's why they pack up the Public Accounts Committee with their members, so there's no way we could investigate. That is why they don't allow the Integrity Commission to function. That is why we haven't had a Contractor General for the last 6 years. I don't know the long span that we haven't had. They find this legal jargon and technicalities to bamboozle you, to explain to you why it can't happen, when everybody knows that it would be the snap of a finger if they wanted it to happen.
Well, and I think that's why we started the conversation where we did, because it could also be just executing a tokenism exercise of saying, okay, well, we'll investigate, but many years later, or have an Auditor General report produced but not submit information, or clearly have areas where things have not been done the way they should. But I think we get so blasé of the idea, and even in the budget, we know. We get so blasé with the lack of information provided, and the Auditor General report pointing it out, and it being a critical issue, even in your investigation for the PAC. I think there clearly seems to be a disconnect between saying, listen, what's happening here is not the proper protocol, but the only people who can instigate for that change, if it's not internal with a change of heart from the government itself, it would have to be the people.
It's the only way. There's no other way. And people beat up politicians, including ourselves, for trying. And we are in that political realm where everybody is cynical and this and that. And we understand that. We have gone to another level where the NGOs have protested. Remember the protest where the NTUCB had, when all the things that the Auditor General were asking, they was part of the reason why they protested. And the Prime Minister at the time said, no problem, we are giving everything we want, just no protest no more.
Sign on cap.
Sign and Up to now, none of it has happened. And that's what continues to happen. But we have glaring situations in our face. You have a Public Accounts Committee report that was submitted last year in September. And not a response, not a commentary, not a feedback, no inclination. And these are the people that are vying for leadership of government. They are the ones that sit. The Honorable Patrick Faber, the Honorable John Saldivar, the Honorable Tracy Panton, and the Honorable Papa Mena are the 4 members of government on the Public Accounts Committee, and 3 of them are vying for the highest seat in their party to form government, to become leaders. And they are the ones that are suppressing accountability. So that goes to show you the level. Then another one that's glaring is again from the Auditor General report, the one before, on immigration. That instead of going to the PAC, that went to the Special Senate Committee because of the pressure that came on government.
But
what happened with that now?
We are left with one keyword that comes to mind automatically as you said that. The exigencies of one's personal life.
But who cares about what a public officer, when it comes to elected, tells you, I don't got time to do my job. Then have somebody else do it for you, dude. If you are so Mr. Liar, that you don't have time because you make money or the cut deal or do whatever you are doing, that you can't spend time to do the job that you were elected or appointed or paid to do, then shame on you, shame on your organization that appointed you, and we as Belizeans can't tolerate it. Get somebody else, the vice chairman or whoever is on that committee, to present the report. It is ridiculous that we in Belize accept those kinds of excuses from, and they're intelligent people and they're attorneys above everything else. They know more than anything else what they are doing. And what they are doing is wrong. It's like delay of justice. It is against our constitutional right that they are sitting on something that needs a report to be handed up. And we believe in other countries, right now in Lebanon you have protests. In Chile you have protests. In Ecuador you have protests for minor things than these. Because people realize that those decisions made by those leaders are affecting their bottom line. And we are going into dictatorship because that's how dictatorships operate. When Hitler was running, he used to be the nicest guy and promised everything in the world, you know, and that's why people were scared. They loved what he was saying at the time because of PR and everything, he was creating this facade. We can't go in that direction in this era when we have all this technology to allow people to come out and voice their opinion.
You know, I think that one of the things you pointed out is looking at the concern that we have with how openly things can be said. You know, if I don't show up to work, I'm accountable, and most other employees are. And to go in any public forum and say I haven't done my job, one I've been paid for by you, who I'm telling, is of concern. and you know. You said it yourself. There's a level of cynicism, and even hearing it from you as a politician, people will look at it and perhaps say, oh, well, that's just opposition talking, that's PUP talking, and perhaps not want to take it seriously.
They have a right to say that, though, because it hasn't worked for them. So what do you expect the Belizean people to think? But I am telling them on your show, there is no Jesus Christ that will come to save us
That's right.
from ourselves. It is us
We have to do the
that
work.
we have to do the work to save ourselves. The Lord will help you,
Yeah.
but He will not come to do it.
Yeah.
And so we gotta sit back and realize that this is our country. We always afraid of, oh, people will come in and take advantage away and this one and that. We gotta take the reins of the horse and say, all right, guy, I don't want to go in the direction of the cliff where the drop off. I want to go in that direction, and you pull the reins and you go in the direction. We have to take it, not the politicians. The people of Belize, and we have to go out on the streets and we have to protest if necessary. We got to do what is necessary, Marlene, because not everybody has the opportunity like we here in this room. We are blessed. We are blessed Belizeans, and I pray to the Lord every night and I give thanks because we are blessed. But you guys need to go into the rural communities or maybe take and drive down south side and realize if those people are blessed. And governments' responsibility is to take care of the ones that cannot take care of themselves. And that is failing.
And in the meantime, I think there are groups of persons and organizations and entities that are trying to push through and keep on doing the work, even if it may seem futile. From what has been published in the public accounts in the recent report, what can happen?
Well, the report that I saw is not the official report. It was a report that I, as chairman, was commissioned by the group to present to them.
Yes.
That report has been in their hands and in many other people's hands for over a year. The report basically stems from the Auditor General's report. And basically, it is a structural recommendation. It is not a political witch hunt. It is telling the government that there are certain things that have to be put in place for us to have a more efficient way of spending the people's money. I won't get into the levels. You can look at it afterwards. But basically, it is to show that they have to have discipline and order within the financial officers in the ministries. It basically tells the financial secretary under the Ministry of Finance that they have to be responsible. People have to be held responsible for doing wrongdoings at the basic level and at the top level. It is showing that we want all committees, including the public account committees, to be held public so that people can be aware of what's happening with their money. There is a whole list of things that are structural recommendations. Any prime minister, outgoing or incoming, if they would be intelligent, would understand that the structuring proposal and the restructuring of the public accounts committee and making these things more accessible to people is for the benefit of country. And it would allow them to be able to function better. But we have politicians that are used to doing things like how they used to do it in the past, not realizing that technology and the time has changed. And people all over the world are getting intolerant of the way they are doing things. But Belize, we are at the brink. I don't know what will happen. Something will happen in Belize. Somebody get back and have to pay 1 cent more when they get now bus and rail up and a whole thing will start. Something will happen. And it won't be from any political party. It will be because the people want change. And that instead of PUP and UDP and you just to change one for the other, well, that's part of the cynicism that we have to, as a party, be responsible to understand and come up with creative ways of explaining to the people that we have a better approach to the situation. Not the best in any way, the greatest, but a better approach. Because we cannot say that we are better than the other side until we get a chance to prove it. And so that's all we can say. But you have to change. If you don't change, you'll get into dictatorship. That's for sure. You can't leave any government, no PUP, no UDP, in power for too long, anywhere in the world.
All right. Well, we are out of time so quickly, but I think it was a very good conversation, kind of to set the tone for the week and give us a reminder of our responsibilities as citizens as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about World Urbanism Day. Please stay tuned.
With over 100 years of service excellence in Belize, the Belize Bank Limited
It's a $2 bill. Keep an eye on the bill because we're going to see what's going to happen. Here we go. And if you look carefully, you're going to see what happened with my $2 bill. Keep your eyes on the bill. Oh my goodness, what is this? Ah, oh my. It looks as though I'm going to have some money to spend. So let's see what happens here. It's a $20 bill. I got to go to the shop to spend this money. But before I go, I want to invite every single one of you to come to KTV Latino. Hey, ahí nos vamos a ver porque ahí van a ver más magia. There you can see more magic. So come on, bring the entire family to KTV Latino.
KTV Latino.
And we're back and we're moving into our second conversation for today. We are joined by two representatives of the Belize Association of Planners, also known as BAP. And we have with us Carolyn Trench Sandiford, who is the president and executive director, and we have Eric Sanchez, who is the community development representative and also a planner. Good morning.
Good morning.
And we're talking about World Urbanism Day. Now, this is a brand new word, I think, to bring into context today. So let's just start off by talking about what the Association of Planners does and how we commemorate this day.
Thank you very much for having us here. And I brought with me Eric Sanchez. I need to recognize that he's one of our young and upcoming planners. And as is the modus operandi of the Belize Association of Planners, we try to find spaces for our young people and our young professionals, because we're being phased out and the new ones are coming in. So I want to recognize him and all the young planners who have recently returned home and are now working. Belize Association of Planners, we were incorporated in 2013 with a main focus to address development challenges in Belize. It's a profession like any other profession. Unfortunately, it's not a well-known profession, but it's a very critical profession in terms of how we manage the growth and development of Belize. And so this year we felt that in stepping up what we do and bringing about more visibility and credibility to our profession, we thought of recognizing and commemorating World Town Planning Day. Now, this is not a new thing. And you said World Urbanism Day. And I start by saying World Town Planning Day because originally that was how it started. 70 years
planning
ago.
Towns.
Right, World Town Planning, because it was always a profession that was referred to as town planning. In fact, one of our first planners, Henry Fairweather, who is a mentor of ours and who goes down in the annals of Belizean history when it comes to planning, having planned the first town in Belize, which was Coruscant Town. He was a town planner. But with urbanization and the fact that more people are living in urban communities, and urban communities are no longer just towns, they're cities, and they're suburbs, and they're towns and villages, and so on and so forth. There's now a transition from the World Town Planning Day, which started some 70 years ago, to now World Urbanism Day. So you're going to still hear the word World Town Planning Day, but it's moving now to World Urbanism Day. And bringing focus on the challenges of urbanization. If it's not planned and managed, then urbanization by itself can bring about increasing poverty, increasing environmental degradation, and so on and so forth.
But aren't we still living in a time where we look at certain distinctions from what is urban and what is rural? So if we're looking at that perspective where we say Belize City and Belmopan, the towns and the villages, we're looking at a system or a structure where we're identifying only two known urban areas, the rest are what we call out district. How does that work in the context of development?
And that's a very interesting perspective, and I'm glad you brought it up, because it was also recognized in the 2010 population census, where the authors of the document indicated that our population is changing.
Yeah.
And also areas that we used to consider rural are no longer rural. Now, how we define rural and urban, I think that's very key.
Yes.
Because rural is normally defined as anything that is not urban. And then rural is normally linked to some agricultural activity. So the economy of the communities are based strictly on agriculture. So when you say Belize City, Belmopan, those two cities, because it's the city of Belmopan and Belize City, their economy was never based on agriculture per se. Belize City was always a port city. For the importation and exportation of the resources exploited from our country. Belmopan became the administrative capital. And then Corozal Tongue, Orange Walk Tongue, those were linked to the sugar industry. If you go south, Dangriga was linked to the citrus industry and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But that has changed.
Well, and that was going to be my question, because I think when we think of the urban-rural distinction, it really has gotten quite murky for us here in Belize, because if you look at population centers, which is what Belize City is, that's one thing. But we have the classification, and I know we can go smaller, but we'll start with village, town, and city.
That's right.
But there's some villages that are as big as towns, and there's some
Bigger than
towns that are generating more revenue than cities.
Exactly.
So where exactly do we have what is in our social studies book and what our children will continue to learn today, but they're not all the same anymore.
And you're quite right, and I think that is where the Belize Association of Planners have come in, because one of our focus over the past few years have been to bring about that knowledge and awareness that our settlements in Belize are changing and evolving, and we can no longer be linked to the traditional concepts of urban and rural. You pointed out something about our villages growing. You're quite right. We have villages that have populations that are more than towns.
Yep.
You look at Ladyville and Punta Gorda
Exactly.
as a classic
But even
example.
in Coyote.
Exactly. And villages that are now merging with towns. And so the populations are growing, but it is not being managed. So the whole governance structure. In fact, earlier I was listening to you talking to Honorable Julius Espat on governance issues and accountability and transparency, and how funding is centered, trickle down. Where does it trickle down?
Yeah.
The reality, if we continue to think of Belize City, Belmopan, and the 7 municipalities as urban only, and the rest of the country as rural, then all those villages, those 201 villages, are governed by a village council act, which does not even provide the revenue base to manage and respond to the needs of those villages. And the more the population grows, the more you're dealing with solid waste issues, the more you're dealing with housing, land for housing, the more you're dealing with jobs, the more you're dealing with infrastructure, sewer, water, electricity. And so it's very important for us as planners to bring forth this knowledge and to say, you know, Belize needs to start rethinking how we classify our settlements, that's one, and how we manage our settlements to ensure that we don't move towards a trajectory where people are living in deplorable environments, where people are not living leading productive lives, where communities are not successful, where we are not including people in spaces and planning for the elderly, for the young people, and so on and so forth.
So how do we, I don't know what triggers a reclassification, but what needs to be done? Because I think the point that you made is perhaps what not many people think about. Yes, you live in a big village, but there's a difference. If you have a town council, which has its own set of regulations, its own set of voting processes and execution and duties, versus a village council and what their role and responsibilities would be. If you look at, let's look at something that's a village. One, Ladyville, which is very populated, but look at Keycaulker.
Yes.
Keycaulker is a village.
Exactly.
And yes, it has few people, but what are they generating and what is the work that they're doing as well?
And one of the things with the village classification, when we say agriculture, it takes into consideration fishes and fishing and so on and so forth. And if you may recall, San Pedro Town, Kikaka Village, Placencia, these were all villages that were linked to fishing industry, but they're now linked to tourism, which is a service industry, which again brings its own challenges.
Which is our current largest revenue
exactly.
earner.
And so this is where for us as planners, we are kind of starting this year to kind of step up the ante, if we can, if I can say so. And we're trying to find ways in which we could create that awareness. And we felt that recognizing and commemorating World Urbanism Day, just like how you have World Diabetes Day, World Population Day, whatever, we have World Urbanism Day and World Tongue Plan. And to bring about knowledge and awareness of planning and planners and the critical role that planners play in society.
So how does a young planner fit into this landscape, so to speak?
And I will have him answer that one.
I think that as a younger person, more as a young planner, I recently graduated from the Vancouver Island University from a full scholarship in last year, 2018. And going to, before attending this school, I really had no idea what urban planning is or town planning is on a grand scale. I think as I grew more every day within my course, I realized how important something like urban planning becomes and how essential an urban planner becomes to a municipality, whether the municipality is a village, a city, a town, or just a community. And as a younger person, I want to think that I don't just only bring newer set of information, newer set of best practices, but I'm also privileged enough to have the capacity to be mentored by persons like Miss Carolyn, who has been in the game for a very long time. But at the same time, I think that we have enough energy to then take up the good fight of actually going around, actually emphasizing the importance of an urban planner. And I think that is something that is vitally missing within Belize. As how can we have so many municipalities in varying degrees of municipalities, but we don't have any urban planner who are trained in urban planning to execute these phases. And then we don't have that respect for someone as an urban planner, when in reality, an urban planner has the capacity to control most, if not all, of the functions of a city. And then you beg to ask the question, how can you then give such a high recognition to an architect, but an architect has to follow the rules of an urban planner? You know, it's like, how can you, which comes first? You know, and of course, not to be bashful to any profession, because an architect is essentially important, but at the same time, an urban planner is equally important to that of an architect or a civil engineer, an engineer. You know, so I think that as a young person, that's where I want to fit in within this context.
But what we have done, I guess this is a recurring theme in our show, but what we've done over the past few years is kind of just skip that part. It's like, it is essential, but we won't fall apart if we skip the urban planning part. And once upon a time, we did skip the architect part as well. Thankfully, that's changed. Because soundness of structures are now a realistic thing for us. But I want to go back though, because what you're pointing out in terms of town planning is so critical. What do we do to reclassify? How does a country, because I'm completely, I don't know, how do we change the classification, or do we need to change the classifications?
That would be a very interesting question that we needed to also pose to the Housing and Population Census Directorate next year.
Okay.
Because, you know, 2020 is the census period. And they have been in fact, I have had discussions with them, and they are aware, like I said, it is stated, but it is a legislative decision. It's a decision of the policymakers and the executive branch of government to basically say, this is how we are now going to move and why. I think we have not had the kind of conversation at the policy level because we tend to do things in silos. And so we continue with the status quo, and we are not doing the necessary research, nor are we looking at the data that exists that can guide us. The 2010 Housing and Population Census was very clear. It stated it, but it was not their duty to basically declare it. They can't make that declaration unless the government so decides. So I think one of the roles of the association then is that we have taken on this advocacy role to say that we are going to use our skill set and knowledge and we are going to build this awareness as to why there needs to be some reclassification. Now, when we talk reclassification, it doesn't necessarily mean that we classify differently. It may mean what is the criteria.
Yeah.
And I think that is how you want to look at it, because the criteria for your hierarchy of settlements is normally based on two key things. One, the population you serve, right? Right?
How many
the
people live in the area?
How many people live in the area,
Yeah.
and your functionality within the national development perspective. What is the role of settlements in delivering services to the people of Belize?
Can I chime in then to say,
Yes.
if I were to look at two particular locations, I've mentioned Ladyville before,
Yes.
and it was brought to my attention over the weekend. You have a community such as Bella Vista down
Yes.
south.
Yes.
I was told, and this is from someone who works within the education ministry, that for instance in Bella Vista they have the largest primary school in the entire country with 1,000 primary school students. So much so that they had to build another school to accommodate the number of students going to school there. You're looking at a particular concentration of people living in a particular area that for all intents and purposes seems to outnumber Independence or another village nearby. That doesn't get a classification as a town.
Because
If you look at Ladyville, it's the same thing.
Village.
If you look at Ladyville, it's the same thing. Ladyville has all the facilities, the amenities and everything that would, in my opinion, classify it as a town.
That's right.
Except that when it does become labeled as such, the tax regime and everything else changes to accommodate township.
And that's why knowledge building is important, because one has to start the process of having the conversation. You mentioned Bella Vista. One of the things we don't do is we don't do projections. Projections of population change is very important because it sets the trends and patterns. We were able to do and say what we are saying and starting this kind of awareness because we sat down as planners and we saw what was happening. So we started to bring it out. Now, Bella Vista, for example, in my opinion, and what the projections are going to show, is going to be larger than Punta Gorda because it's one of the fastest growing villages in the country. So it's going to be, the population is going to be more than Punta Gorda. How can we continue to allow these villages, whether it's Bella Vista, whether it's Trial Farm merging with Orange Walk Town, whether it's the Independence, Placencia, Mango Creek region, whether it is Camalote, which is also growing,
or Roaring Creek, which is that jump outside of Belmopan.
As you mentioned, Lord's Bank is tying up in with
Ladyville.
And then you have Sand Hill and all. So you're having this conglomeration of urban communities merging. We need then as policymakers, and this is where the policy and decision makers, I think, need to step up their game because they're not doing the necessary projections, which is basically saying based on trends from over the past 20 years, this is what we see happening and this is what we're going to expect. And it is going to be very important for us when it comes in the next 5-10 years because you're going to then begin to see where without the proper management systems and the governance systems in place, a simple thing that is happening in some communities, the proliferation of bars. Why? Because the only income the village council have is from a license. So that has social implications. You spoke about Bella Vista and the expansion of the school. You need land, like I said, for housing, for education, for healthcare. So unless we start pulling this data together and saying where our country is going in terms of the settlement patterns and trends, and not only how we look at settlement patterns and trends in terms of the country, but how we look at land within urban communities. And this is where technical areas like Eric becomes very important because it's not just about the settlement trends and patterns, it's what's happening and contained within a settlement. We are having urban blight and decay. You can move into some communities, overgrown, abandoned buildings, poor housing, high unemployment, so on and so forth. How do we change that to make these communities more successful, more productive, have spaces for people Those things have to be addressed.
But it's interesting because as you build these connections for us this morning, we have all the examples to show why without urban planning, we have a lot of challenges. I mean, we look around Belize City and we know even from looking what's a commercial area, what's not a commercial area, consideration for parking, whether there are enough jobs, you know, even just ambulances, as simple as that, or fire department. Those are all things to be taken into consideration. So we have all these examples to show what happens when you don't plan, but we still haven't taken it as seriously. Because I imagine in an area like Bella Vista, for example, if a town planner or a planner gets their hands on it, they can be able to put in the proper, whether it's water system, emergency care system, a clinic that would be functional. Because if you have this concentration of people, the last thing you want to do is to get the ambulance that come from Dangriga to Bella Vista to take them back to Dangriga for.
And that's why I mentioned the point that we have to look at two things: the population that you serve and the functionality, because the role of the state is to provide services to its residents. And so you have to look at a town or a village in terms of who do they serve and how do they link back to a national development trajectory. And those things are very important. And I think that is where, for us from World Town Planning Day and trying commemorating, it is to start this process. It's a challenge for us as planners because we don't have resources per se to be doing a lot. So
we're not a government entity.
Exactly, we are not a government, but we are professionals, and we want our profession to be recognized, just like the attorneys, just like the engineers, just like the architects, and so on. You mentioned earlier when Eric was talking, you said, well, the architect. All professions are important.
Yes.
But we need to be able to balance them all. Why is it, for example, and I can use this as a classic example. I had to review a document the other day with a budget which calls for an attorney that speaks to $300 an hour. If a planner puts $300 a day, you start hearing, how enough to charge so much? But here you have a city that have all these hills and these urban communities, just like you mentioned, that have all these hills. Who is it that is going to resolve it? It's only planners who can come in with the necessary technical expertise to address them. And
can you fix a problem like an unplanned city like Belize?
I will leave that to Eric.
I think that one of the things that we have to remember is to kind of scope what planning is, what an urban planner does. And one of the easiest way that I've learned to do it is to say, have you ever played the game Sims?
No.
Urban planning is like SimCity and all those city planning games. Sims is urban planning in real life, right? And you got to start focusing on dividing what an urban planner does, because you have transportation planner, you have park planners, you have planning lawyers, you have strategic planners, you have funeral planners, which is actually a part of urban planning, and you have this whole array of planners. So then you look at that doesn't even look at tourism or heritage planning.
I'm so sorry, you said all these planners and thinking of all the challenges in each specific area.
Precisely, but then you have
we run out of space at the morgue because the city's too big.
And then you look at things, the technical support that an urban planner brings. For instance, a park. A park should always be, there should always be a park within 400 meters of a person or of a child, right? You look at parks versus schools, versus how does that interact with the transportation, and how does the transportation interacts with, for instance, a fire safety area, or how does it interact with roundabouts? Do we build roundabouts without overpass? Because if we don't build an overpass around a roundabout, then it essentially defeats the purpose of a roundabout.
Then they run across it.
You know, and so you go back to see, can a city like Belize City be fixed or improved? Yes, easily, right? But you need the people who have the technical support to do it. My dad once said, if we're in a plane and the plane is about to crash because the pilot passes away or faints, needless you look at me because I'm not a pilot. So then why do we then look at persons who have no degree or no experience in urban planning to do urban planning? It doesn't make sense, because I will never go to a carpenter to do a heart surgery. So why then must I, as a city, go to somebody who is not a planner?
You're speaking to tradition or a cultural frame of mind that has long plagued Belize, where
we're reactive.
Not only are we reactive, but we don't look to the right people to guide us in a particular direction. we look for the next best thing, but not necessarily the best thing.
The quickest route.
Yeah.
You know how many times I work on, my office is on Alexandra Street. And I can tell you the exact time of the day when the traffic is going to be blocked. And then I ask myself, suppose you spoke about fire. Suppose there's a need for an ambulance or a fire engine, because these are narrow streets, right? How do you resolve that pathway for the vehicles can't even go to the side? So those are the issues that you bring in your planners. Right? When you look at an area that is coming urban blight and decay, like I said, unemployment, overgrown spaces and abandoned spaces, poor housing, you bring in your planners, because your planners come in and look at the data and do the redesign to revitalize. So planners do get involved in economic development. Planners get involved in housing. Planners get involved in recreation and leisure space. One of the examples Eric, I remember saying to us, is he studied in Vancouver, and he was saying there was a mass exodus of young people out of Vancouver. Why? Because there's no nightlife and there's no space. So you have to be planning for the young people. We're now looking at the challenges of Belize. You're now looking at an aging population. That's another dynamics we're not looking at. We're looking at two things in terms of our urban demographics. We're looking at what we call the reverse urbanization, where you're having the rise of these intermediate settlements, the villages and so on. But you're also looking, that is happening at the same time that we're having an aging population. So when you start talking about aging population, you have to then start designing to accommodate the aged people. We're not thinking along that.
And also, just because it's a very important point to hammer home, I think Ms. mentioned that we had roughly 192 villages across the country. Now, for each village to develop or to access funding for the community development, they have to have an official community plan, or what we would have traditionally called a master plan. There's no community in Belize that has an accepted by cabinet, I forgot the word, a ratified, legally ratified document that says this is how the community is going to grow. Now, how can you have 192
because we work in election cycle, it would have to be a 5-year plan.
But you see the tradition for urban planning.
But it's a reality. No, it's a reality. And I think, again, that is why, from our standpoint, as planners, I say we continue to try in our own way to bring awareness and build knowledge and say to our people of Belize, we need to start rethinking how we do things. If we're to unleash the potential of this nation, if we're to ensure that our communities develop in such a way that every citizen have the opportunity to be successful, to be productive, if we're going to use space and optimize, especially in light of issues like climate change, the aging population, rising inequality, resource depletion. Those things are going to come crashing down on us one day, and those are the things that trigger revolts.
All right. Well, you guys have, if I had a magic wand, I'd put an urban planner in.
Well, I just would want to, if you would allow me to just make a note that say that we're commemorating World Urbanism Day, World Town Planning Day. It's Friday, November the 8th. I have reached out to the president of the Mayors Association, who is Mayor Khalid Belail. So Belmopan will be joining us. He's putting off an exhibition called Belmopan Past, Present and Future at the George Price Center. And we're encouraging all other municipalities and to do some activity to commemorate and recognize the day. As well, the Belize Association of Planners will be launching its newsletter, so that we want to keep people involved and engaged in the work and activities that we're doing to bring credibility and legitimacy to the profession of planning.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for coming in and just sharing a snippet of what's involved in planning, but really opening our eyes to the importance of it. So thank you.
Thank you too for having us.
We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking about vegan options at Martha's Cafe. So please stay tuned.
Goodness, what is this? Ah, oh my. It looks as though I'm going to have some money to spend. So let's see what happens here. It's a $20 bill. I gotta go to the shop to spend this money. But before I go, I want to invite every single one of you to come to KTV Latino. Hey, ahí nos vamos a ver porque ahí van a ver más magia. Yeah, you can see more magic. So come on, bring the entire family to KTV Latino.
KTV Latino.
Engage with 12 mentors to prepare themselves to pitch their projects to a room full of television industry
Highlights of CARFESTA 14's opening ceremony. Lots to do, lots to see as we explore Destination Barbados. And we continue our look into the Sustainable Tourism Conference held in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. All this and more right here on this station.
Into our final conversation for today, we are joined by two well-known faces, I should say. When you think of Shanti Belize and Martha's Cafe and Spa and cottage houses, there's a whole lot going on here. And we have with us Greta Martha Williams and Michelle Ashanti Williams, all of Shanti Belize. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
So ladies, we're here to talk about Martha's Cafe and your vegan options, but it's also a great opportunity to kind of just look at your business model and what you're doing there, and more importantly, a family business as well.
Yes, it's a family business. Yeah, I always say we have a unique partnership because we have the advantage of 46 years of knowing each other. And if you count me in her belly, even longer. So we know each other quite well. And so I think with that, we really have an advantage in the partnership aspect. You know, there's a lot of trust, there's a lot of give and take. And like we were talking before, we balance off each other quite well.
Yeah.
I dream, she grounds.
So it started off first with just yoga.
Yes.
And you've grown, how long ago was it?
We celebrated a year for Martha's March 1st this year.
Yeah.
So a little bit like 18 months.
No, but since the first yoga studio.
Oh, since 2012.
Okay.
So yeah.
And then the idea of wellness kind of just grew from there.
Yeah.
It all happened organically. There was no planning.
There was
no proposal. We
Yeah.
didn't know what kind of money we were going to make, but Michelle had her yoga thing going, and I had a piece of land that I wanted to develop, and I thought, okay, fine, I'll put some cottages. And then we had the upstairs of the Harbor View. And then I thought, well, you know, why not make it holistic and healthy? So that's how the vegan vegetarian cafe came in.
Yeah. Well, also, since I turned vegetarian, I go through spells vegan, vegetarian. You know, she cooks, and so she's had to become a lot more creative in our cooking.
Yeah.
And then she pretty much eats vegetarian as well. She has some fish sometimes, but so, and also when we used to have our rock board meeting, she would cook for our board members, and they were all vegetarian and vegan. So it came from that, and then so she had pretty much a whole menu that was ready for the cafe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's how Martha's kind of opened up.
So a year ago, you created the cafe with vegan and vegetarian menu.
Yes.
Let's just, for people who don't know, what's the difference between vegan and vegetarian again?
Vegan is absolutely no animal products. Vegetarian has byproducts of the animal, which is eggs, butter, cheese.
Okay.
So those are distinct differences there.
Okay.
Okay.
So, all right. So you offer vegan and vegetarian.
Just vegan, vegetarian.
And in a population where people have
They
fried
want their
chicken for
chicken.
lunch and barbecue on Saturdays and rice and beans for Sunday dinner with
Guilty
chicken.
as charged.
Yeah. I mean, it's a risk, right?
It was definitely a risk, but I don't even think we thought, I mean, we didn't really think about that. We just knew how eating that way had benefited us.
Yeah.
And we saw the trend happening. And it's not that we're advocating for people to become vegan or vegetarian, but we want to offer, especially Belizeans, an option that if they're having a vegetarian day or a no meat day, that they have a place that they will always know that the food quality will be high, and you know, the food is made with love, and people sense that, and that they can come and enjoy it, and they could to get a hearty meal. The way I describe it, it's like that home cooked comfort food, but with a healthy twist. And we often find that there are people that come that are meat eaters that we always recommend the lasagna for meat eaters, and they are quite
They're
happy.
amazed. They're amazed at the taste. You know, because seasoning has a lot to do with food. I mean, if you don't season meat, it doesn't taste very good. So we try and incorporate some seasoning that are traditional into the vegan vegetarian meals.
And I think that's such an interesting point, because we in Belize, we don't realize it, we eat heavily seasoned food.
Yeah.
So it's actually easier to eat a vegetarian
Yeah.
meal, because once it has the same seasonings,
Yeah.
it tastes the same.
Exactly. And we try to cut down on the amount of salt that we use. We use only brown sugar. We have agave that we use. Also, we do offer gluten-free options as well. So people that also have gluten intolerance, we do have that. The brownies are not gluten-free.
I'm just watching.
We tried that gluten-free brownies. It wasn't. It didn't take off so well. But people want the real stuff.
I mean, if you're gonna have a brownie,
they don't have any eggs in those.
These are
they're vegan.
Vegan brownies.
Yeah, they're vegan.
So there are no eggs, but we put bananas instead.
Okay.
So, Ms. Marta, tell us about your own discovery of shifting from what people would classify as regular cooking to developing vegan and vegetarian options.
Yeah. Well, mine came about because basically of health reasons.
Yeah.
And it's a good way to lower your cholesterol. If you have a problem with your heart, again, the risks are lower. And so I decided that I wanted to eat healthy. I started to research recipes, because I mean, I'm not creative that much, but I do make some of my own food right now. But yeah, I started to research recipes, and Michelle had her board members there for ROC, and they were all vegetarians, and they'd come around lunchtime, and I thought, okay, this is a good time to see if these meals that I prepare will go. And they loved it.
Yeah.
They loved it, and one by one, I'd introduce a different meal and different menu, and I thought, oh, you know what? We could open this vegetarian place now, because I've got a whole list of food that people really love.
Yeah.
So that's how I came up with my vegetarian menu.
Isn't there a common notion that going vegetarian or going vegan is perhaps more expensive than it is to consume normal foods or regular diet?
It depends on, we tend to put a price on good things for our body. It depends on how you want to treat your body. Lentils, very healthy, very cheap, full of protein, fiber, It's a good meal. We do a lentil soup there that's quite tasty, and we add some ginger and some curry in it, and it really is a winner. We do a lot of chickpeas. Chickpeas, again, is high fiber, high protein. And we mix that with coconut milk and some herbs and stuff. Brown rice. It's not expensive when you think about it.
Or replacing dip with hummus.
Yeah. I think that what has happened is junk food has become incredibly cheap. So if you're comparing packaged chips that are filled with monosodium glutamate, and just fried food, it's become cheap.
Yeah.
So I think you have to really think about what you're investing in your body, and think about it that way. It has been known to be more expensive, but if you're comparing it to really, really cheap junk food, of course it'll come across like that.
Yeah. And is it going to be filling? Because the other thing is, people look at a salad that you may get at a restaurant and it's rabbit food. I always feel sorry for vegetarians in the country. They go for a salad or they go get a vegetarian meal and it's iceberg lettuce and shaved carrots,
But this is also the notion, and
I don't do that. Not iceberg lettuce.
But I think also there is this notion that vegan vegetarian food, you're just eating grass, and that's not it at all. I mean, there's a lot of nuts involved. You can have flour. It can be it can be filling. You could have rice. So it's filling, and it doesn't really mean just salad and
look, we have brownies.
Exactly.
So what are some of the best-selling items?
The lentil soup goes down very well. Also the lasagna and the curry bowl. We do a Buddha bowl, which is all raw except for hummus in the center and raw vegetables around. And that is really, really a big seller.
It's like a burst of enzymes, because we do 3 different types of peppers, roasted chickpeas, brown rice, olives, and what else? And then in the middle is our homemade hummus. And it is... That's the way people have described it. It's like a burst of enzyme, and it's also really cooling in a very hot day. So that goes well. We've just developed a new Belizean power bowl, which is with black beans and rice,
brown rice,
yeah,
infused with cilantro.
Ooh,
it's really tasty. We have a side of avocado, which you get your fats from there. You've got your plantain, baked plantain, and then there's a salad.
And then we drizzle it with vegan cheese.
So that you have some moisture, because the rice and beans need some gravy. We put vegan cheese on it.
Now we know it's made by a Belizean when you say that.
Like, for instance, the vegan cheese that we have, it's not nut cheese, it's actually made from vegetables. And
you would know the difference.
You would not know the difference. No. We put it on our nachos. It's a nacho cheese. It tastes just like nacho cheese. So it's we have to be creative, but it's just good to know, I think, for people out there that are becoming more conscious. The other day we had a talk, Alexander Agay gave a talk about digestion and the fact that the gut is our first brain, and what we put in the gut will determine how we think, our mental clarity, our energy level, everything. And he himself is a lacto-vegetarian, so but he doesn't force people, and he's not saying you can't eat meat. He's just saying balance it off. Our digestion needs to rest. So if you're going to eat meat, take some time, let it digest, and in between have things that are easily more digestible, so the energy that goes to the gut can go into living and thinking clearly. So
and you know what, I appreciate what you said, because I think it's not about, it's difficult to think of our life eating something completely different. You really have to want to adopt a new lifestyle for that. But you can start incrementally. So maybe I'm a bit curious about what a vegan or vegetarian meal may be. I can go and try it and say, oh, well, I'd never imagined it'd be this good. And maybe become more comfortable having it more often.
I've heard a lot of people saying they're not becoming vegetarian or vegan, but they're taking a no meat day or 2 no meat days. They also the notion,
or 1 no meat meal.
1 no meat meal. Also this notion of sugar, like when we first opened, we would have people come and because we don't serve soft drinks. All our juices are cold pressed juices, so it's pure juice. There's no water. There's no sugar added, and when they tried it, they were so amazed that fresh juice could be so sweet and it could taste so good. So it's also shifting from relying on artificial sugar and getting your sugar, your sweetness from natural, natural ways, smoothies.
So 1 year later, what are the lessons you've learned?
First of all, the biggest lesson is that there's a slow season. Maca season. We felt it this year. But you know, we've added more stuff to our menu.
Yeah.
And you know, people will want different things, and we had to get that together for them. And we learned that Belizeans are appreciating vegan, vegetarian. And they come there and they eat and they go, oh my God, I didn't think it would taste so nice.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of expanding your palate.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of close into our rice and beans and chicken. And if you only take time to just taste some
Explore.
other foods.
Yeah.
I think also what we've learned is because we take everything that we do, both my mom and I, we take it so seriously, and because it's our name on it, and so we've had to learn to manage our time. She's there in the morning. Every morning you go for breakfast, my mom is
morning
there
shift.
until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, every single morning.
Yeah.
And then I'm there in the evening. But I think we've also learned how to empower our staff and trying to teach our staff about the lifestyle and about what they're actually promoting at the center. A lot of our staff is now getting into yoga. We have a yoga teacher on staff at Martha's Cafe now, and the rest of the staff is getting interested, and they're also getting interested. They have a meal at the cafe. They're realizing that they can have a healthy meal every day, and that it doesn't taste any different. So we're realizing through the cafe, not only are we sharing to the Belizean public, but we've also got this little family that we're trying to nurture and to build as well.
And I mean, you haven't said it, but you do have an amazing view from where you're situated.
How should we forget that?
Blessings.
I know.
We do walk in every day, and there's always gratitude to that.
And we never take it for granted.
Yeah.
You know.
So
It's
you
just
are
lovely.
located on, tell us where you are and your opening hours.
We're on 4th Street, and it's right outside of the tourist village.
Yeah.
And on that property there, you'll find the
cafe,
the cottages, and also apartments.
Okay.
And then the studio, and then the yoga studio.
Yoga studio and spa.
Yeah. So we're developing a complete wellness oasis.
Yeah.
So that people can come, Belizeans, foreigners, they can come, they can stay, and they can enjoy everything that we have to offer.
Nice. And you're open?
We're open from 7 in the morning for breakfast, right through at the moment until 7 at night. But November 15 will be open 7 in the morning until 7 at 8, 7 days a week. At the moment, we're closed on Sundays.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And just because you're eating healthy doesn't mean you don't get treats, because you can have your vegan brownie with my favorite, the turmeric ice cream.
I forgot the turmeric latte ice cream. That is so good.
That is the best combination you ask for, and then you say, "Oh, this is healthy." All right, ladies.
Everything in moderation.
Yeah. But thank you for coming in and sharing the work you've done. Congratulations on your 1-year anniversary.
Thank you so much.
We definitely hope that more people will be willing to try something new.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and take that final break. When we come back, we'll have our wrap up, so stay tuned.
With over 100 years of service excellence in Belize, the Belize Bank Limited recognizes the importance of leading
We are back.
Yeah.
And we're just about out of time.
Absolutely.
I'll take this quick opportunity to say the brownies are delicious. I'll put that on record.
I do appreciate you hearing that, because I think everybody knows that you have a hefty appetite as well.
Indeed, I do.
Eating healthy or taking a healthier version of something doesn't mean that it's going to taste bad. You know, you gotta just try it, see what you like. Some things you like and some things you won't. It's like any other food.
Yep.
But I think it's always worth it to try to figure out how you can eat just a bit healthier, one meal at a time, maybe one ingredient at a time, because it's something that we all collectively have to do. But that's all I'm going to say about that. We're out of time. Remember to tune in to our newscast tonight for the latest at 6:30 p.m. But in the meantime, if you'd like to contact us here at Open Your Eyes, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com. Drop me a line at marlene_oye@channel5belize.com. Find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and on Instagram at OYEBelize. And remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
To start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your hearts open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, Belize.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.